Hey, you ever seen this thing? Isn't it useless? This thing's called Freytag's Pyramid. It was introduced by German dramatist Gustav Freytag in 1863, and I doubt it's helped anyone ever since. Now this thing's deal is that it's supposed to be a visual representation of dramatic structure, but the problem with that has always been that dramatic narratives are complex four-dimensional structures. That is, they show how situations change over time, thus the difficulty of representing it in a simple two-dimensional drawing. Now, the Freytag's Pyramid answers this by reducing the immense complexity of storytelling down to a single thing. See, the left to right represents the progression of time, and the diagonal line represents dramatic tension. So all it can really tell you is that drama should increase, which ranks right up there with such insights as fire is hot and birds go tweet. But this thing isn't even accurate. Anyone who pays attention to a movie should know that dramatic tension doesn't develop smoothly over time.
Damn, we're smooth.
But develops in jerks and jolts with both ups and downs as the story progresses through its turning points. And why is the peak always put here instead of, at the climax? So we gotta throw this 106-year-old fossil into the bin. But what to replace it with? Well, here's something I've been tinkering around with that I thought I'd share. Say goodbye to Freytag's Pyramid, say hello to Scriptmonk's Pentagon. Copyright. Copyright, copyright, copyright. That's how it works, right? You just say copyright. Anywho, I've often said how act structure gives movies a pleasing sense of geometry. So what a better way to represent it than with a geometric structure. And I like the Pentagon because it takes the cyclical illustration of the hero's journey model and adds the 5 points to represent the 5 major dramatic turning points of traditional Hollywood structure. And with this shape, we not only get a clever way to illustrate the distribution of a story's biggest events, but can figuratively see what happens to a character at each stage of the journey. But to do this, we mustn't imagine our protagonist traveling along the outside of the Pentagon, but trapped inside it. Now before I explain, I gotta make clear this is simply a visual aid. It's just a clever way for beginners to better understand how traditional movie structure works. I make no claim to its brilliance, and it remains simple and reductive, as all two-dimensional drawings tend to be. Anywho, the protagonist begins here, on the flat, stable line representing the status quo of the story's beginning. Things are going along just as they usually should until something disrupts the status quo. This is the first turning point, the inciting incident. Thanks to this disruption, the protagonist can't continue on as usual. They are forced to set out on an unfamiliar path they would not otherwise take. So begins our adventure, steadily diverging from the usual and the everyday. This road's not yet too difficult, but then a second turning point. This is the end of Act 1, the story's point of no return. By choosing or being forced to take this twist in the road, the protagonist foregoes any last chance of turning back around. By taking this turn, the protagonist commits to seeing the long journey through to its end. So begins the next line of the Pentagon, representing Act 2A. But as I've said before on this channel, the main purpose of Act 2A is to make clear just how ill-equipped the protagonist is for the challenges they face. Through some faulty judgments, attitudes, or behaviors, the protagonist's actions in Act 2A end up making the situation worse, more difficult, or more risky. Thus, as our hero journeys along this line of the Pentagon, their world slowly turns upside down until they reach the midpoint where a crisis reveals how everything is now turned on its head.
Oh dear.
Our hero is now in a very precarious position. They need to respond to this crisis by striking out on a new course that'll hopefully turn things around again. So begins Act 2B, where the protagonist attempts to correct their course with new sets of actions. But of course, this part of the story ain't easy. I mean, you try walking on the ceiling. These efforts lead to the fourth turning point. I said in my last video how the end of Act 2B should provide a dramatic turn of events that throws the story into its final stage with the most momentum possible. And looky here what happens. The fourth turn of the Pentagon sends the hero hurtling downhill into Act 3 until they crash headlong into the climax. And at that climax, the drama is resolved, setting the world right side up again, returning us to a straight, stable status quo.
Thank goodness that's over.
But not the same one as before. The protagonist has broken free from the dramatic cycle, and they're now on a new course in life. Hey look, a sequel! And another sequel! Check it out, an entire television series! I mean, sure, the Pentagon doesn't explain everything, but it explains more than this. Feel free to share this model with whomever you like, and tell me what you think down in the comments. Granted, it's not perfect, and I'll probably develop it more later on, but until then, make sure you're subscribed and click the like button to help share this channel with more persons like yourself. I am the Scriptmonk, and you should congratulate me, because I went through this entire video without once mentioning my favorite luchador, Pentagon Jr. Nope, no Pentagon Jr. anywhere in this video.